Welcome back to another episode with me, Fay Semple, your host. I'm a spiritual geomancer and I help people use earth energy to unlock their potential, create healthy environments, and work with consciousness other than themselves. So today we're going to explore the fascinating world, again, of sacred geometry and its profound connection with our very own bodies. I'm ready really to uncover how ancient geometric principles are mirrored within our physiology, which actually guides us towards spiritual alignment and inner peace. So stay tuned as we dive into sacred geometry in the body, the human connection. So, is there a synergy between our body and the geometry of creation? So, sacred geometry is more than just mystical symbols. It's a universal language that bridges the gaps between the material and the spiritual realm. Within our bodies, the intricate patterns of sacred geometry reflect the very essence of creation itself. So let's dive into that harmonious synergy between our body structure and the geometry of the universe, from the very basic cellular level to the complex formation of our skeletal system. These ancient patterns resonate deeply within us. So, have you ever wondered, I suppose, why certain shapes and patterns feel inherently balanced? So, one of the examples I always think of is modern buildings and really old buildings. Now, I don't know about you, but when I walk into a really old building, I feel much more in place and settled, and it all seems to be very, much more peaceful. Modern buildings, not just the architecture, they can all feel, I always feel a sense of somehow mismatch between myself and the building. What's really interesting about this is that modern architecture is built upon a metric system. Now, the metric system is not designed around the human body the way the imperial measurements are. The imperial measurements are all based upon the human body. They're based upon an inch, a foot, a yard, which is a stride. So ancient architecture, right up until really we moved into the metric system, was built around the proportions of the human body. So we feel much more in place. Everything from the width and height of doors to stairs, everything was built around the human body. Now, our bodies are built upon the principles of sacred geometry, including the Fibonacci sequence. Now, this sequence is not just a mathematical curiosity, it's the blueprint for life. From the spirals of our DNA to the proportions of our limbs, the Fibonacci sequence, it elegantly really demonstrates our interconnectedness with all living forms. Now, by understanding this relationship, we bridge our connection from the body to our homes to the wider environment. So, ergonomic alignment was present in ancient architecture. So, as I said, that was all built around the Fibonacci sequence. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. Ancient civilizations understood the power of sacred geometry and constructed their monuments in alignment with these principles. So, unlike much of modern architecture, which overlooks the human proportions, these structures were ergonomically designed to resonate with the human body. So, as John Michel discusses in The New View Over Atlantis, these sacred monuments were not only visually stunning, but also fostered a deep sense of harmony and alignment, which we often don't feel in modern architecture. So Michel emphasised how sites such as Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid were built with precise geometric ratios and alignments that mirrored celestial patterns and created a profound connection between the earth and the cosmos. And this was as evident in ancient architecture of sacred monuments as it was until our very ordinary homes and building structures converted to the metric system. So it's really important that we understand how important this geometry is. So ancient builders tapped into the natural energy grid of the pattern in placing their sacred spaces, but also where they placed their living spaces. So we had sacred spaces where we connected to the divine, and then we have secular spaces where we live and work. And they were all placed on particular places in and around the earth grid, so that we were utilizing this sacred geometry, because the earth grid enhances flows of energy. So this not only made structures functional, but it also imbued them with a spiritual significance that modern architecture lacks. And in fact, it infused them with a lot of beauty that modern architecture lacks. A lot of modern architecture is very utilitarian. And if we don't have sort of beauty in these structures, beauty implies meaning. So it's like our daily lives are disconnected from sacred geometry, plus there's no beauty in them. So it almost robs our life, our sort of day-to-day experience, of some of perhaps the meaning that we used to have with more beautiful architecture or beautiful doorways, everything from beautifully designed door handles. That gives every essence of your life meaning. And I think that's missing, the sacred geometry missing from our daily life experiences, disconnects us from a form of subtle energy that actually should be everywhere around us, but we don't feel it the same. So if we look at the work of Sieg Longbrandt, a really good friend of mine, in his work on sacred sites, he delved into the geometric layouts of places like Avebury and Glastonbury. So he explained that these sites are designed using sacred proportions and alignments to facilitate spiritual experiences and healing that resonate deeply with the human energy field. So, as I say, it's not just about our sacred spaces. Of course, we want sacred spaces where we can go and heal, where our spiritual self, our emotional health, which will then heal our physical health. But also, when we imbue sacred proportion into our daily lives, it just creates a better day-to-day experience for us, that perhaps in many instances in modern cities and modern towns and modern homes, that is missing. And I think that's a huge shame. So if we look at things like ancient landscape, as I say, we can look at how geometric placements of monuments were used to mark significant earth energies and earth and things like ley lines, because these create harmonious interactions between human activity and the natural world. So we can look to say that these ancient practices, aren't arbitrary. They were deeply intentional in creating spaces that nurtured the body and the mind. So if we go back to that distinction between secular and sacred spaces are spaces where we can go. They're on big earth energy nodal points, where those stable energy frequencies allow us to have out-of-body experience, altered states of consciousness, connect to the divine feminine for insight, intuition, epiphany moments, downloads, whatever you wish to call them. But our secular spaces where we live and work, they're also important, because it's aimed to have, I say, this harmonious interaction between human activity and the natural world. We have to live, we have to cook, we have to make things. Obviously, as society advanced, that all those activities have become more complex and are increasingly more mechanized. But our activities should still be harmonious with the natural world. Again, I think a lot of that is unfortunately lost. And this is where I'm so passionate about geomancy, because geomancy enables us to work productively with sacred space in our own homes, gardens, small businesses, farms, but it also enables us to look at the actual necessity of activity that we need to do to survive in our lives, in our homes, in our businesses. But it should make sure that those activities are in a harmonious interaction with the natural world. We need to work, we need to farm, we need to do things to sustain our lives in this modern world, but we should still be doing so in a way that is in alignment with the natural order of things. So there's lots and lots of work being done by everybody that looks at sacred geometry, the ergonomics of how we live, sacred spaces, and the astrology of places as well. So if we look at megalithic sites, particularly across Britain, let's say, which is the ones I'm most familiar with, the ancient builders, had advanced understanding of geometry and astronomy. I mean, we know that's a worldwide system, not just Britain, obviously. But, these sites are laid out with incredible precision, using units of measurements that are consistent across vast distances, indicating really a sophisticated level of knowledge of the Earth's dimensions and energies. So the positioning of monuments often coincides with things like their latitude. So it's as if the builders of this monument knew where they were building this site in relation to the rest of the planet. And that's quite incredible when we look at that. And I think that knowledge comes from an understanding of the grid. Once you understand the Earth energy grid, we would, by actually projecting along it, you can see the size of it, you can go out and you can look down on it from other spaces. So I think ancient man had this a much different ability, mind, and awareness to see these things than we have. And I think increasingly as we diverge in our towns and buildings and the way we live away from sacred geometry and away from these basic building blocks of reality, then we become more disconnected. And I think ancient man was much more on that path, and yet we have veered off. So by bringing sacred geometry back into our lives, we can put ourselves back on this connected path with not just the earth, but with the cosmos as a whole. So I think there's a compelling picture really of how ancient architecture was designed to resonate with the human body and the natural world. And by drawing on these ancient practices, we can create modern living spaces and modern working environments that nurture our body, mind, and soul and foster a deeper connection with the earth and the cosmos, because we do live in a modern world. We no longer live in a hunter-gatherer society. We no longer live in a pre-mechanized society where we farm by hand, where we make clothes by hand. We don't live in that world. And unless there's a massive natural disaster of some description, we're probably not going to go back to that world. So we want to make sure that what we're doing in our contemporary lives still it matches these ancient principles. And that's one of the reasons why I love teaching geometry, because it's geomancy, because ancient geomancy can still be applied to contemporary living. So how can we harness this ancient wisdom in our modern lives? What can we do? So whether you're a, wellness coach, yoga instructor, alternative therapist, or even someone who just has a personal journey of spiritual growth, really, sacred geometry offers a multitude of pathways to enhance your inner harmony and well-being. So I've touched on this before in previous videos, but by incorporating geometric patterns into your meditation practices, you can achieve deeper states of focus and spiritual alignment. Visualizing these shapes or having some sacred geometry a design that you put on your wall or a mat that you can look at can help you connect these universal flows of energy. Many alternative therapies as well, such as Reiki, acupuncture, all tap into the principles of sacred geometry because they utilize the sacred geometry, the meridian lines and things of the body. So understanding these connections can enhance the efficacy of these healing practices. So you can also, integrating sacred geometry into daily life doesn't have to be complicated. We can just simply observe the natural geometry in everything around us in the natural world. So I can look out my window here and I have a great big fern in my garden with these beautiful fronds. That is sacred geometry. I have a rose not far behind it. Every petal, every structure of that flower is sacred geometry. The flight of the bee that goes in those flowers is living sacred geometry. Everything, your own body, the Fibonacci sequence embedded within your own body is sacred geometry. So we can recognize that these geometrical structures give life to everything. It is not an abstract concept. It is the building blocks. It is the blueprint, the pattern, the form of all things are written in sacred geometry before they come into physical form. And, ancient spaces such as temples, cathedrals, stone circles, Gothic cathedrals were all constructed with precise geometric principles that create a field of resonance. So this field of resonance can profoundly affect the human energy field. And that then promotes our spiritual growth, our healing, this sense of inner peace, so that we can calm down the fractiousness we often feel in modern life, the pressure, the hustle, the grind. And we can really start to feel a sense of, who am I? What did I come here to do? What gifts did I bring to share to the world? It might be you came to be a vet, a leader. You could be a yoga instructor. You could have brought art, joy, music, but you came to bring something to the world. And being in these stable fields of resonance that sacred space creates enables us to cut out the interference when we're talking to our higher consciousness or our vast and multi-dimensional soul, of which our incarnation is only really a small part. But it enables us to hear our soul more deeply so that we can live, we have this incarnate experience. Our body has its own sacred geometry. We chose to have this experience for a reason. If our duty is to increase our capacity to be who we were meant to be, to live the reason that we came here for. And sacred space enables us to tune in, to feel that. Who am I and what did I come here? So, as I said, modern secular spaces, modern homes built without the sacred geometry that is based upon the human form often lack these resonant qualities. So while they may serve practical purposes of homes, of buildings, of hospitals, of office places, they don't generally foster the same level of spiritual and emotional well-being. The absence of sacred geometry designs means that these spaces cannot create the same harmonic resonance that aligns with our body's natural energy fields. And this is why living in big urban environments can be so hard on people. It can be really difficult. So if we look again, touch back on sacred sites, I want to emphasize how the geometric configurations of these places are designed to interact with natural earth energies. So we have a beautiful space that's designed to interact with natural earth energies, and that creates then this harmonious environment, really that modern buildings often fail to replicate. So if we look at, really ancient architecture, everything from the Greek Parthenon to, the amphitheaters in Rome, right up until sort of modern Rococo buildings and, really before we went metric, as I say, all these buildings resonated with the body's natural energies and the earth's natural energies. They may not have been all sacred spaces, no, but they were still built ergonomically around the sacred geometry of the human. They were built so that when we walked into that beautiful theatre, we had the best experience of being at the theatre because it was built for the human experience, whereas now buildings are almost built for building's sake, and they just happen to fit people in them. So if we look, research, if we use dowsing, research on dowsing and earth energy, again, the very placement and design of ancient sites, whether that be both sacred spaces, but also secular spaces where we live and work, they were chosen to enhance these natural resonances. Again, that's completely overlooked in the construction of modern secular buildings. So this is really important that we recognize that now, once we were living with the earth energy and we were using that resonance to enhance our own energy so that we were in a symbiotic relationship. Now there's the earth energy. We're kind of plonked on the top. in our modern conurbations. So by visiting and spending time in sacred spaces, if you've got an old cathedral in your city, go there. You don't have to go and find a really ancient site, but any, sort of old building can help tap into the powerful energetic fields created by sacred geometry. And I could say this experience can lead to profound spiritual insights, and emotional healing, and a really much deeper connection with the cosmos. These sacred sites serve as powerful reminders of an ancient wisdom, really, that recognized the intricate interplay between geometry, energy, and the human experiences. So in our modern lives, we can draw inspiration from these ancient practices to create our own sacred spaces, whether in our homes, in our gardens, or our places of work. And by incorporating elements of sacred geometry into our environments, we can cultivate spaces that support our spiritual growth and overall well-being. So I hope you found this valuable, found value really in this exploration of sacred geometry and its profound connection with our bodies. And if you have, please like and subscribe to this channel and join our community of spiritual seekers as we sort of continue to uncover the ancient wisdom that guides us towards a harmonious and meaningful life. So don't forget to hit the notification button so you'll never miss an update. And thank you for your support. So thanks again for joining me in this journey into the sacred geometry and body, the human connection. And I hope that you will continue to explore and integrate these timeless principles into your life, find a deeper meaning and hopefully some peace along the way. And I would love to see you again for the next installment.